Remember last week we told you about what seemed like a simple break-in case. Surveillance video caught burglars smashing into Crush Comics, a bookshop in Castro Valley. The suspects got away with dozens of valuable comic books and other items. Well, a few days later, the Alameda County Sheriff's Department made an arrest, even announcing a suspect had been linked to a robbery at another store. But it turns out it wasn't just a couple of isolated break-ins. There were at least 3 other burglaries over several weeks at comic shops and toy stores across the East Bay. And here's the kicker. It wasn't the police who tracked down the suspect. Katie Nielsen explains how an employee at the Castro Valley comic book store cracked the case.
Look, I'm not gonna lie, part of the reason why I'm deciding to cover this story is that it's so ridiculously entertaining. Here we have an incident, or a series of incidents, where criminals are breaking into comic book shops and into toy stores, stealing valuable issues and valuable collector's item style toys, and the police in Alameda County, which is the area that covers cities like the city of Oakland, are completely flummoxed by the situation. They're unable to crack the case, but of course, our comic book store owners are people who work at these particular places that are obsessed with the Avengers, Daredevil, and all these different various comic books, have decided to go vigilante mode and ultimately ended up figuring out who the suspects were behind not just their robbery, but multiple different other robberies, and I absolutely love everything about it in this wholesome story of criminals hopefully getting their just desserts, although we are talking about California, so maybe, just maybe, they'll get rewarded, and the vigilantes who ended up solving this case will somehow get punished, but who the hell knows? We'll figure it out as we're going through this story. But before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay?
A brazen thief who doesn't try very hard to cover his tracks, and a ragtag group of detectives who are hot on his trail. It sounds like it could be the plot to a new comic book series, but actually, this is the true story of the Castro Valley Avengers.
Listen, guys. I understand. I understand what you guys are thinking about this. Here you have a local news story of these comic book geeks, nerds, whatever you want to call them, solving their crime, and the setup, the premise for this, is that they send attractive news reporter to the comic book store in order to pitch the tale as she's walking, and while that is being set up, we end up having these total goofs holding up their comic book style weapons and posing like superheroes as she labels them the Castro Area Avengers. Now, if you know anything about Marvel Comics, you probably know that the West Coast Avengers are often considered the inferior team to the East Coast Avengers, also known as the Avengers, and I'm not saying anything because these guys solve the crime and I'm totally in support of them and I'm rooting for them in order to meet a wonderful, lovely girl at some point in time in the future, but they're kind of living up to the stereotype. They're kind of exactly the kind of people that you would expect to work at a comic book store to be celebrating them cracking a case like this, them solving a crime like this. I'm not saying anything, I'm just saying the local news is kind of doing them dirty by telling them to pose in this particular way.
Crush Comics store manager Cole Sanders and owner Josh Hunter never thought they'd find themselves as real-life comic book vigilantes.
So look, obviously they're laughing it off, they're having fun right there, but that was an aggressively long period of time for them to hold those poses while they're doing the setup for this local news thing, and I'm just saying, it's a little bit over the top. It's a little bit too goofy, even though I am rooting for these people. Trust me, I'm not going to make fun of them throughout the whole course of the video, unless I am going to do that, unless that's exactly what I'm going to do, because they did do a good thing.
It's wild. It's so funny.
They're on the cutting edge of crime.
Is this like a, yeah.
Yeah, we got some clues.
But that's exactly what happened after the shop was burglarized in the early morning hours of March 22nd.
When I got down here, I was like, okay, it's not as bad as it could be. I'm going to try to be really positive about this.
The burglar cleared the wall where the most valuable comic books were displayed. Josh thought they were gone for good until one of his employees spotted a very specific comic book for sale on eBay less than 12 hours after the burglary.
This is the one that really, solved the case. absolutely unique one-of-one sketch cover from our artist friend Dan.
So you see the surveillance video right there as they were breaking into this place, which by the way is aptly named Crush Comics, as they were trying to crush these people's dreams, and they realized that they were wiped out of some of their most expensive collector's item style merchandise. However, in this particular case, they ended up spotting the listing, as they showed to you right there, on eBay for one of these comics, and this guy decided that he was just going to go and buy it. And what ultimately ended up happening, since they used eBay with their real name and with their real accounts, they were able to trace back what was stolen to the individuals. However, that was not nearly enough for them. They decided that they were going to go into Instagram, figure out who was behind accounts of the same name, and what they ultimately ended up discovering is that there were rare toys like this Lego figurine that were posted on said Instagram. So already these guys are hot on the trail, and again, I gotta give them credit for this, because a lot of people would kind of balk at the idea of buying back your own stolen merchandise, but they figured, probably because they had used eBay before, that this would be a great mechanism in order for them to get information on the perpetrators behind this particular crime. And of course, the irony of the fact that these guys are comic book people reading about detective cases and whatnot, and they decided to crack it in this way, is not lost on me. Now I'm going to show you a clip of them posing again, because it's a bit ridiculous, it's a bit absurd, and I just want you to see how goofy the local news presented this. But in reality, this is actually really intelligent work, and again, why give the people over at Crush Comics in the Bay Area credit where credit is due.
Honorary detectives didn't stop there and contacted a competing shop in San Leandro that had also been broken into recently.
I called him and I was like, hey, we found this eBay page. They looks almost certainly like they stole some of our stuff. You should check too. And they got back to us and they're like, yeah, there's like 10 of our books on there right now. And I was like, wow, okay.
When they saw Lego items on the eBay page, they reached out to a toy shop in San Ramon that had recently lost a number of valuable sets to a shoplifter.
I smell trouble.
She's like, do you think this is him? And she sent me a picture of the guy that they had, and he wasn't Mass in this one. And based on the Google searches and stuff that we did, we're like, okay, this is probably the guy.
I mean, how can you not love these guys? The first thing that they decide to do is call up a competing comic book shop that's in and around the area that they were also made aware of that suffered a break-in, and they end up asking them if they recognize any of the material on this particular eBay page. They end up finding about 10 or 12 of their books on that particular page, which of course indicates that they were burglarized by the same person, and they did this for a competitor to help build up the case against these individuals. And then they decide that they're going to call a toy store that was broken into, and like you just heard right there, they were able to identify the shoplifter behind this that also ended up sharing this same eBay page in terms of what was posted on there for sale. And in the shoplifting incident, they actually got a clear view of his face, which they were able to cross-reference with the Instagram page that they had, and that ultimately ended up leading to a positive ID. Again, comic book nerds who be reading about Batman detectivizing certain stuff decided to turn on their own detective mode and figure out what they needed to do in order to put together this case and basically gift it to the local police. Now, of course, the Bay Area police and prosecutors, who knows how they will respond to this. I mean, they did throw out Chesa Boudin, London Breed. They also threw out the Alameda County District Attorney, who wouldn't prosecute anyone for anything, Pamela Price. They voted down Prop 47 with Prop 36. So we got a lot of things moving in the correct direction. They also threw out the mayor of Oakland. So maybe, just maybe, we will actually see a serious prosecution of these individuals and the return of most, if not all, of the property back to the people who lost it, who had it stolen from them, who had it deprived from them, based on the fact that these guys did not want to let go of a hot lead, and again, did not just do the basics like call the police, tell them what was up, and then move on with their day and accept the loss. You gotta absolutely love that. And again, I hate to lean into the cheesy motif of the local news, but this is the stuff that heroes are made of. This is the idea that you are going to step up, you are going to make the difference for yourself, rather than expecting somebody else to come and save you. And that's what these guys did. And they not only did it for themselves, they did it for the various small businesses in and around the area, which honestly, I'm gonna sound again a little bit cheesy, I find to be quite beautiful, if I'm being perfectly honest. Again, you want to throw the cheese at me? You want to pretend like I'm posing in the beginning of the local news segment like these guys? That's fine. If you want to do that, that's acceptable. But I do think this is actually a great story.
They turned the information over to police, and just a couple days later, another toy shop was hit.
And my wife and I are looking at each other, and same thing. They broke the window, they got in, they sold a bunch of stuff and left. Do you think this could be the same guy? So I go to message them on Instagram. We had already had a message from them saying that, hey, we think it's the same guy.
The very next day, the Alameda County Sheriff's Department served a search warrant at the home of 29-year-old Narula Amiri of Livermore, where they say they found tens of thousands of dollars of comic books, collectibles, and Lego sets, the majority of which were returned to their respective stores.
Again, this is great to see. They put together this whole package, they send it to law enforcement, there's another break-in, and by the time this break-in actually occurred, they decided that they wanted to contact the owners of that particular store. They already had a message from that store owner saying that they felt like this was the same person behind all of this. So then you have the Alameda County Sheriff's Department issue the search warrant like they just explained to you, and they find huge collections of the material, and they're able to return it back to the respective owners. And again, they're able to hold this criminal accountable because he's an absolute idiot.
Reflecting on the entire experience, you know the Castro Valley Avengers could only do one thing. Quote, another comic book superhero.
What did Peacemaker say? Who knows why crazy men do the things that they do? Yeah.
Josh and Cole say they're now actually thinking about publishing their own comic book series based on the break-in and subsequent detective work. But they said they'd have to change it up a little bit and make the villain a little harder to catch.
Now look, I'm going to be perfectly honest with all of you out there in the audience. If they were to publish that comic book, if they were to fictionalize it and make it into an interesting tale, I would in no way, shape, or form buy a copy of it because I am absolutely not interested in that. But I do find it funny that, of course, they had to quote somebody, but in a very cheesy way. Maybe this lady reporter was making them nervous, although we did hear throughout the course of this particular segment that this guy right here is in fact married, so we give him credit where credit is due. And honestly, you got to give credit to all the different various store owners who ended up working together in a collaborative way in order to lead to the arrest of this suspect. Now, I'm hopeful that he will be charged with the serious crime, that he will be sent to prison for this, because it's absolutely disgusting behavior. These are small businesses in high rent areas that again are in a dying industry. They're in comic books, so that means they're in publishing, and I would be hopeful that they would take all of those factors into account, the number of times that he did it, in order to sentence him appropriately for all these different various break-ins. Now, I know some people out there are going to say that's an innocent Baba Angel Aladdin who was just doing it in order to feed his starving family, but the fact is, this is a thug, this is a brute, this is somebody who, of course, was trying to destroy in order to benefit themselves, and he's the exact kind of person that needs to be stopped. And I'm really happy about this, although it would have made me a little bit happier, if I'm being perfectly honest, if they went full Matt Murdock on them and decided that they were going to break into his house themselves with a grappling hook and start beating the crap out of him in order to serve him up to the police on a silver platter. And I'm not saying that you should do that. I'm not saying that you should go full Punisher on these individuals. I'm just saying if we're going to go with the comic book motif, then at least go out in a blaze of glory. Don't just give up immediately if you're the villain when you get a search warrant. Actually go toe-to-toe, have some martial arts skills that are unexplainable or inexplicable for your particular character, and go down fighting after the hero delivers the final blow, and not the killing blow, because no, I'm not advocating for violence. Everybody relax. It's all just jokes. It's all just amusement. Do I need to show you the thing of them posing again? I'm going to put it up on screen, because the fact that the local news made them do this when they genuinely actually did something good and acted in accordance with their values in a wonderful way, they still had to paint them as ridiculous goose. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. I want to know what you guys think about all this down in the comments below. If you like this video, then show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social medias, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about I'm not going to call them the whatever Coast or whatever Avengers or whatever, the comic book guys stopping a crime. Until next time.